that one. Plus, we've got the North and South Carolina top 10, a segment you'll hear right here on the Fan Upstate. All right, my friends, let us get this party kick-started here today with this. My belief is, ladies and gentlemen, that the South Carolina Gamecocks are in a better position right now than the Clemson Tigers. And I was thinking about this today, and I came to this realization because expectation is an absolute beast. It's an unfortunate monster. If two children both bring home B grades on their third grade report cards, in one household, that'll be met with Chuck E. Cheese, Dave and Buster's, a celebration, right? A birthday cake. In other households, that'll be met with a spanking. If you ask me the question, who is going to have a better record this year, Clemson or South Carolina? I've looked at the schedules. I still think probably Clemson. Clemson probably has a better record this year than South Carolina. But when I look at who's in a better position, given the expectations, given where their fan base is at, yada, 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 it's hard for me to say anything but South Carolina right now. And I was watching Charleston Southern scare the daylights out of Clemson for a half of football on Saturday. And I said, my God, this is going to get ugly this year. I firmly believe this is going to get ugly this year. And, like a lot of people say, well, you're just clickbaiting. Well, you're not clicking right now. You're listening, right? Well, you are just being an alarmist. No, I'm really not. The score at halftime between Clemson, who has one of the top 5 most talented rosters in all of college football, okay, according to the 24/7 Sports Total Talent Composite, and Charleston Southern, who is a 2-8 team at the FCS level. Don't say they're like Furman. That's the biggest slap in the face to Furman I've ever seen. Furman is top 5, top 10 in the FCS. Charleston Southern is bottom 5, bottom 10 in the FCS. They were 2-8 a year ago. And a top 5 team with top 5 talent in Clemson was leading at half 24-17. Now, look, it's nice that Clemson flexed its muscles in the second half. It's nice that they, ran off 42 unanswered points in half number 2 to win going away 66-17. But my friends, you see, if you begin the game like that against anybody with a pulse, you will be dead on arrival. And that's what I don't get that Clemson fans are saying. Like they don't want to be alarmist. They don't want to panic. I got something for you right here, okay? Clemson is going to play Florida State not this weekend, but next weekend. I am not one of these dudes that stays married to my preseason takes. Smart people evolve. They change. They get new data points. They tell you what they think after doing so. Only stubborn idiots don't evolve and move off their initial takes when presented with new information. Folks, I'm here to tell you that next week, Clemson against Florida State is going to be a top 3 team, the Seminoles, against an unranked team, Clemson. Clemson is unranked at this time in the season for the first time in 20-odd years, okay? Unranked for the first time in week 3, for the first time in a long time. Why? Well, because the AP reacts to how you look. The AP dropped Clemson 16 spots on Tuesday morning of last week, 6 days ago. And they dropped him again because they didn't look the part on Saturday. And why can I say this is going to be a battle of a top 3 team against an unranked a week from Saturday? Because all you got to do, ladies and gentlemen, is look at the teams ahead of Clemson in the AP poll right now. Okay, I've looked at teams 18 through 25. Colorado, Oklahoma, UNC, Duke, Miami, Washington State, UCLA, and Iowa. By the way, Diesel, I hit my upset pick for the first time ever, seemingly, on Saturday.
I'm still 0 on the season.
How about that? I got Miami over Texas A&M, and Jimbo Fisher's futility is the only thing that saved me there. He sucks. God, he sucks. Did you see he was making excuses again? He was like, they were snapping their hands. They were simulating that's why you gave up 48 points, Jimbo. That's why you gave up. You allowed 48 points.
Yeah, well, you remember our ACC SEC team preview when we interviewed the beat writer for Texas A&M, and he said, look, they're going to make the exact same mistake again. They're going to throw way too much money at somebody who's a hot name again. That's just what they do in College Station.
But anyway, folks, when you look at these teams, all right, Colorado, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Duke, Miami, Washington State, UCLA, and Iowa, okay, those are the teams that could fall out of the top 25 for Clemson to go back in. Here's who they have this week. Are you ready? Colorado gets Colorado State. Who's winning that one? Oklahoma gets Tulsa. Who's winning that one? North Carolina gets Minnesota, but it's at North Carolina. Who's winning that one? Duke gets Northwestern at Duke. Who's winning that one? Miami gets Bethune-Cookman. Washington State gets Northern Colorado. UCLA gets NC Central. I'm assuming that's in North Carolina. I've never heard of it. And Iowa gets Western Michigan. Clemson against Florida State is going to be a top 3 team against an unranked team. And it was kind of hard, it was a more interesting topic in the offseason to kind of go through what success would be for the South Carolina Gamecocks. It was more interesting, right? Because there's debate there. With Clemson, there is no debate. It's kind of like when somebody dies, like I'm always like, okay, you pay your homage, you pay your respects on the air, but I don't know really how to talk about it. There's no topic there. With Clemson, what's the topic? It's either success and you make the college football playoff, or failure and you don't for the 3rd consecutive year. And the feeling is that Dabo maybe's lost his fastball. The feeling is that maybe the program isn't what it used to be. Can it get back to what it used to be? And Clemson fans don't want to hear that. But here's the reality. Clemson fans are trembling at the thought of Florida State coming to play you next Saturday. They are freaking trembling. Don't worry. I'm a Florida fan. I'm also trembling at playing Florida State at the end of the year. Did you see what Florida State did on Saturday, Diesel? 66 points. They hung on Southern Miss. 66 points.
And Southern Miss is back, not to where they were in the 90s, but Southern Miss is a solid football team. That's not a bad football team that they smoked yesterday.
66
Saturday.
Points, my friends. All right. Miami doesn't want any part of Florida State. Florida doesn't want any part of Florida State. And if you're honest with yourselves in your heart of hearts, you don't want any part of Florida State either. You're trembling. That is going to be a top 3 team against an unranked team. All right? Believe that. Now, your job, your role in this is to make Death Valley again. And that is where I challenge each and every one of you. Okay? Make Death Valley again. It's been much more like Happy Valley or Picnic Valley. The scariest part about Death Valley takes place outside the stadium. There's a cemetery out there that's a little bit creepy. Okay? But outside of that, it is a warm, family-friendly, very chill, blasé environment. All right? Florida State fans, and I'm not advocating violence, ladies and gentlemen, but Florida State fans should say, man, we knew we were in for a dogfight the second we stepped into that stadium. Okay? We knew we were in for a dogfight. That was hostile. That place was hostile. I can't tell you the last time anyone said that about Clemson and about Death Valley. That is your charge if you are a Clemson fan. Okay? Make Death Valley great again. Make it hostile again. Because too many fans inside that stadium have become entitled, have expected dominance. There's an entire generation of young Clemson fans that have only known greatness. And when you've only known greatness, it's hard to be hungry for it.
Well, I saw it on the faces of the Alabama fans when they lost to Texas Saturday night. You could see the exact same thing. There were guys in polo shirts, college kids in polo shirts and khaki shorts. You know they're in a fraternity somewhere and probably only got in because they're a legacy. And they have that, what? We can't lose at home. This isn't supposed to happen. That's the look they had on their faces.
That's it. And that's the feeling that I had when they played South Carolina at home. Like, I'm confused. Brain can't compute, can't comprehend. Get your asses there. Get your asses there early. Make a lot of noise, okay? Make sure every Florida State fan is exhausted by the time they leave. All right? That's your job. That's your job. Do it, all right? And achieve greatness, because Clemson's margin of error is now nil. It is now 0. Now, I will tell you, there is one thing to be really optimistic and confident about, happy about even, and you guys know this as well as I do. 18, because I've done this topic in the last month, 18 of the last 20 years, there was a team that started the year in the top 10 and finished the year unranked. 19 of the last 21 years, a team that began the year unranked, ended the year in the top 10. You might as well consider yourselves one of those teams, Clemson, because we're 6 days into the season and you're unranked. Okay? So take it as a charge to yourself and all that you believe in to get back into the top 10, to finish the year in the top 10. It's possible.
You know, a lot of Clemson fans are in that denial stage right now. Every time we've been bringing this up now for a couple of weeks, that the fans are complacent, that the environment there at Death Valley is not what it once was, is not where it needs to be. And every time you bring it up, you got people saying, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Look at the record that we've had over the last X number of games. It's clearly a tough place to play. Look, you can sit there with your head in the sand. You can imitate the ostrich if you want to, heads in the sand. But when Florida State comes in there and clobbers your ass, that's going to be a rude awakening.
And right now, Diesel, if that happens, for all intents and purposes, it is season over in Clemson. They've already won the ACC. Winning the ACC doesn't move Clemson fans' needles anymore. It is college football playoff or bust. And so when I say to you that South Carolina and their program and their mood tracker for their fan base is in a better position than Clemson, it's because Clemson now faces mission impossible. And South Carolina can lose 3 or 4 games, can look up at the end of the year. Man, I really like the direction of where we're headed. Really like the direction of where we're going. You know, for South Carolina, for Clemson, every single time you step out on the field, it's success or failure for the 2023 season. Every single time. All right? There is no margin for error any longer. I'm still in shock Clemson lost to Duke. Still in shock about that. And I know Duke is a good little football team. If that sounds like a backhanded compliment, it is. They don't have the talent. They have great coaching. They have perhaps the 3rd or 4th best quarterback in the upcoming draft class in Riley Leonard. But a team that is 5th best in America in talent, Clemson, should never lose to a team whose talent ranking is 66th. And that's exactly what happened. I don't know why. I watched the game. I still don't know why. I still don't understand how that happened. All right? So anyway, folks, your feeling. My feeling is that Clemson is in a worse spot than South Carolina is. When you factor in performance, who's on the team, program expectations. I was watching the first half of that game on Saturday in total disbelief. Total disbelief. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. You know, and it's just, guys, you know, you do that against Florida State at the end of the first quarter, it's 28-0, if not worse. You got to be ready to go. You got to be ready to play. Cade Klubnik is way too mistake prone right now. I mean, way. You know, the pick 6 that he threw against Charleston Southern was one of the worst plays I've ever seen. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know. And spare me Clemson haters, DJ Uiagalelei is not the answer. Did you see what he did this year? Oh, this week? No, you didn't, right? Because it was nothing. He did nothing this week. He's not the answer either. All right? All right, my friends. 844-326-3663. Let's see what you guys are saying on the carpro.com text line. Texter says, Mark, UNC is going to beat down USC. UNC barely beat App State, so by the law of transfers, I know it doesn't apply to football. App State would beat the Gamecocks. I don't have any dispute with that, Diesel.
No, I don't either. App State looked good against North Carolina. Hell of a football game. That's 3 total games decided by 11 points. App State and North Carolina. It's a program that gets $30 million extra per season. 3 games decided by a total of 11 points.
Texter says, Mark, make no mistake, FAU ain't no pushover. So says Mongo. Well, you know, if the score is 24-17 at half against Charleston Southern, do I think FAU could be leading at half? I do. Texter says, Mark, being a Clemson fan, I was disgusted by the first half performance by Clemson. The fact that CSU was leading them at one point shows there's bad signs. Other Clemson fans, don't let the score fool you to what a possible reality this season could be. Texter says, so Mark, what happens if Clemson fans beats Florida State by 2 scores? Will Clemson jump back into the top 10 or does FSU drop out of the top 25? Neither. Texter, neither. I mean, you think Clemson could beat FSU by 2 scores? Waiter, I'll have one of what he's having. Texter, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I root for the teams I cover to fare well. I root for nothing positive ever to happen to Free Shoes University. Ever. Ever. Okay? I want Clemson to put Florida State in a body bag. That only happens if Jordan Travis gets his leg swept, Danielson style. That's the only way that happens. And I don't want that to happen, right? Mark, you were correct. My pick of Furman over USC was terrible. I guess FU Gamecocks means feathers up. Big win for the Gamecocks. Big win. Big win. Much more to get to on that.
By the way, what is the theme that South Carolina football is trying to go for? So that you unveiled this thing where you've got a fake train leading your team out onto the field. You've got the cockabooses outside of one end zone. So that's 2 references to trains for this program, inside and outside of this program. Yet right there on the scoreboard, it says the cockpit, and that is a aeronautical reference. Pick one, man. What are you going to be? You going to be trains or planes?
All right, guys. As part of our due diligence, it is only right and just if we reset what we thought about both Clemson and South Carolina to start the year. And we will do that with you next, now that we have some new information. This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark, Ron, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. 22 years ago today, our worlds were rocked by the worst attack on American soil in all of the illustrious history of this country, the greatest country on earth, the United States of America. And we would be remiss if we did not remember that and honor those people who lost their lives during that awful day. One day that has stayed with us through time. And, you know, my hope is that we've done enough as a nation to prevent something like that from happening again. You know, like that should always be the worst day in American history. Always. You know, like if you're ranking the worst days in American history, Pearl Harbor, 9/11, right? That should always be. But if we're not buttoned up, it won't be the worst day in American history. You got a madman running Russia right now. Okay? You got to be we've got to be very, very careful. I hate what happened to everyone on 9/11. I was sick to my stomach. I was watching a special on this last night. You know, all the people who breathed in all the dust and smoke, and there's a documentary on that and what happened to them and their lungs and their suffering. Folks, you know, like it's the most sad moment for all of us in American history. And I think we would all be surprised to learn just how few degrees we have to somebody who perished in that building. You know, I would venture to guess we all have 3 degrees or less to someone who lost their lives on 9/11. Many of you listening right now know someone who lost their life on 9/11, right? If you do, I more than invite you to share your story on that day with us today, okay? You know, the slogan is never forget, and believe you me, we never will. We never will. I just hope that we've learned enough never to have to go through that again, and I hope you guys can understand why I will never support, talk about, highlight any affiliation to 9/11 on this show, which is why I've been so adamant in speaking against Live Golf. The Saudi royal family funded 9/11. The Saudi royal family funds Live Golf. I'm out. I'm out. In my opinion, all of you should be out as well. All right, my friends. So I thought it would be, okay. Let's get to see who we got here. Carry the 2, drop the 1. We got Tallahassee Todd in Piedmont joining us here on the show. Yes, Todd, go ahead.
Let me tell you something, brother. Florida State is back. I'm telling all you something. I'm telling all you guys something right now. I'm calling all the guys from Tallahassee.
What did you
say?
You cut yourself off.
Florida State is back. I'm telling all my boys as I head down to watch my team play.
Florida
I'm warning all my boys.
There you go.
Don't take nothing lightly.
Florida.
I'm telling all my boys. Mark, I'm gonna tell you, I don't play soft for Clemson. Because when Dabo was chest bumping down there last year in Tallahassee, when Trevor Lawrence was down there in Clemson, was down there toward my school, they whooping our ass. Everybody's all smiling now. Now everybody's all scared for Clemson. Well, guess what? I don't give a darn. Payback is a you know what, brother.
Okay, so it's Tallahassee Todd. Tallahassee Todd. Hang on just one second. All right, let's have this be a two-way conversation. What is your score prediction, Florida State at Clemson? Give me the score.
I hope we be a 66-12.
No, what is the actual score? Not what you hope. What is the actual score?
I wouldn't mind it being 54-7. I would love it.
I don't think you're understanding the question, Todd. It's not what you would like to see. I'm not asking what you want for your birthday. I'm saying when the game is done, what will the actual score be?
Let's see. With the focus that we're on right now, being America's team that come from the ashes, being a realistic I'm thinking I'll like 49-12. I would love that.
Okay, so he's going, that's his score. 49-12 is his score. Clemson fans, are you hearing this? Like, are you hearing this? If this doesn't stick a spur in your groin, nothing will. Make Death Valley great again, because you got the Tallahassee Todds of the world, and I love you, Tallahassee.
And he was willing to come down 17 points on his prediction there.
He did.
Yeah, you told him to keep it real, and he goes, all right, I'll come down 17.
The prediction is 49-12, Clemson fans. You know, if that doesn't get you going, if that doesn't make you make Death Valley an intimidating, hostile place to play on Saturday the 23rd, nothing will. Wake up. You've got one shot. Eminem, Lose Yourself. That soundtrack should be playing in your mind over and over and over again. You know, if your life was on the line in that game, would you win? You tell me. You know, there should be no doubt after that Saturday that Clemson wants it more. And so I hope you'll forgive me for kind of glossing over Florida Atlantic this week, because to me, Diesel, Clemson needs 10, 11 days of hardcore, tough love, getting ready for the real test that's coming to Clemson, South Carolina.
Do you think Dabo's even capable of that anymore? Or is he in the huddle saying, well, oh, shucks, guys, feels good to get the win the way that we did. You know, we all want to play better. We all want to be tougher. So let's pray on it. You know, let's pray and hope we get tougher by next week.
Can't do that, Diesel. Can't do that. Absolutely can't do that.
That's not really something that Jesus does, you know? It doesn't make you a better football player.
Mongo says, Tallahassee Todd bout called us some bitches. Spur Daddy says, Florida State beats Clemson 38-14. Texter says, Mark, I'm a Tiger fan and I love my Tigers. I have to stay positive and believe. I'm not in the staff and can't do anything but support them. I do know all the ingredients are there. If they clean up the stupidity and the turnovers, then I truly believe it's not going to be that easy for Free Shoes University. My pick, Tigers 38, Florida State 28. That's what I love to see. They're like, you know, have the vision for how it can happen. Okay, believe you me, we will paint all the scenarios for a Clemson victory, but it begins with kicking FAU's ass this coming Saturday. And it begins with you guys rallying the troops and creating the kind of atmosphere that Death Valley has been known for, but has fallen off.
There's no reason for FAU to score more than 10 points on you. 14 tops. You give up 2 scores. That is the level that I'm expecting out of Clemson's defense against an FBS team that you are so far and away better than talent-wise. If you're not holding them to 14 points, and I'm including garbage time touchdowns there, then your defense isn't it. It's not it this year.
Diesel, let's do this. Knowing what we know now, let's look at Clemson's schedule again and let's offer an honest assessment. And the hope is, again, that this will be a kick to the playmakers that gets you guys going. All right? Florida Atlantic, I think, Diesel, is going to be a win. If it's close for a while, everyone's going to be laughing at Clemson once again. If it's 17-13 at halftime, everyone's going to be laughing at you again. Florida State now looks like a loss.
Yep.
There's no doubt about
Agreed.
it, right? So you're staring right in the face at 2-2 through 4 games. You got 8 games to go. What is at Syracuse looking like to you now, Diesel?
At Syracuse, God, that's almost looking like a toss-up. I think it's a win, but not by much. I mean, I'm talking like a 10-point win or less.
So if you give me at Syracuse and Wake Forest in the next 2 games, what I've seen, Diesel, Clemson splits those games.
Correct.
So that's 3-3, 3-3. At Miami, how's that looking to you?
That's looking like a loss right now.
That's looking like a loss. There's 3-4. At NC State, maybe a win.
NC State got curb stomped by Notre Dame,
right?
So they're not that good either.
Okay, so we'll say 4-4 through 8 games. Notre Dame, how's that looking to you?
That's looking like a beatdown. Blowout loss.
Okay, Georgia Tech at home could be a win. That's 5-5. North Carolina at home is looking like a loss.
Yep.
Right? That's 5-6. And then you got a toss-up game at South Carolina to end the year. And that's exactly what Chris Phillips said a week ago, didn't he? He's like, man, can you
sense 5-7 teams?
Can you sense the excitement? 5-6 South Carolina for 5-6 Clemson. based on what I've seen, that's what you guys look to me like right now. You look like a 5-6 team heading to South Carolina, fighting to become bowl eligible. It's up to you guys to change that. The talent on the team exists to change that. You know, the fervor among the fan base should exist to change that. Why doesn't it? Why doesn't it? Where is it? Where is the passion? Where is the fire? You make the college football playoff this year, or you have busted. My friends, you have busted. Let's see what you guys are saying on the carpro.com text line. Panthers go 0 for 17. They suck, so says Rick. Everyone needs to relax. Don't pay attention to metrics. ESPN still has Alabama #1 in the power index. Texter says, Mark, if Clemson loses at home to Florida State, explain how Clemson makes the ACC title game with no divisions this year. Wait for it. They don't. They don't, Diesel. You know why? Because if they lose at home to Florida State, they've got two conference losses.
Yeah.
Okay. At that point, Duke now has a tiebreaker over you and no losses in the conference. So if Duke, if you go 6-2 and Duke goes 5-3, you go. But for all intents and purposes, you're playing for the Gasparilla Bowl if you lose to Florida State.
Hey, at least you finally get to go to a new location that, your fans have been bitching and moaning for years. Oh, it's so boring going back to the same locations year in and year out. Hey, you're going to have fun in the Motor City Bowl. Detroit's fun that time of year.
Yeah. Well, Diesel, something's got to toughen these fans up. It's Death Valley's really felt like a country club of late. You'll enjoy Detroit this time of year, so says Diesel. Diesel, I just drove up through Detroit. I didn't enjoy it this time of year. Okay. What do you think it's going to be? What do you think it's going to be like in late December?
What were the two bowl games that Crazy Ralph threw at us last year? The Catalytic Converter Bowl last week when he called in. He can be playing for the Catalytic Converter Bowl.
Oh my gosh, Diesel, I've nailed it. I've been saying, people have been asking me, Mark, what do you think the line is going to be for Clemson, Florida State? I said 4.5. Now we have a texter saying that is the line. Vegas line for Clemson, Florida State is Florida State -4.5. Vegas is the least emotional measuring stick. What's your take on that line?
That's not a measuring stick, guys. That is setting the line so that they can get the most possible money placed on either side of the line. You guys keep looking at Vegas like they're trying to predict scores. No, they are trying to set a line that's going to get you to put money down.
And I will tell you this, Diesel, based on what I've seen today, I throw all my money on Florida State on that line.
Yeah.
All my money.
Oh, yeah.
Because what'll happen is you get kicked in the teeth early. Soft fans are going to leave the game. There's no atmosphere for the second half. The game gets ugly, just like it did in 2013. But I know that Clemson has the talent to win that game. I know they do. Okay? So what atmosphere can the fans create? How ready can Cade Klubnik and the Garrett Riley offense get?
I think the best analogy I can come up for Clemson football right now and Clemson fans is they are a lobster in a pot. You don't put a lobster in boiling hot water because they will jump out because they realize, oh my God, something terrible is happening. But you put a lobster in lukewarm water and slowly heat it up so that it cooks them. And that is where Clemson fans are right now. They're sitting in that lukewarm water. It could go either way. It could go either way on you. But you're just happily bobbing along like it's no big deal.
Speaking about bobbing along, what are we going to do about the Carolina Panthers, Diesel? I swear to you guys, we don't care about being right, okay? We want to be wrong. We want to have something to cheer about. Diesel said it's going to be a long year.
Yeah.
I said 7-10. That now feels optimistic. Well, we've got Jim Szoke joining us from the Carolina Panthers broadcast team. That, my friends, is next. Get your thoughts in, your questions for Jim Szoke about the Carolina Panthers. We will answer them next for you right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate.
May God have mercy on this program.
We don't hold back when it comes to sports, and neither should you. This is Offsides with Mark Ryan on the Fan Upstate.
It's Offsides. Mark, Ron, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Thrilled right now. Joining us again for the 2023 Carolina Panthers season, our friend. He's in the WBT Radio Hall of Fame. He does the play-by-play for East Carolina University, my wife's alma mater, and is the Carolina Panthers color commentator, Jim Szoke, joining us right now from Charlotte. Thrilled to have you back for another year, Jim. We truly appreciate your time, and we'd be remiss if we did not congratulate you on all of the accolades that have come your way. Well-deserved, well-earned, my friend. Thanks so much as always. How are you?
I'm great. That's quite the intro. Yeah, this was my busiest weekend as far as the travel part, getting out to Greenville for the later game with a 4:00 kick. And of course, like many games, a weather delay against Marshall. There were flights, but I'm glad I didn't do it. I just drove to Atlanta from Greenville, which is about 7 hours, did the Panther game Sunday, and drove back afterwards. So I'm awake now, but it was a lot going on there for a while.
So there's a lot of fans today, Jim, that are highly disappointed in the outcome from yesterday. Can we open with the positive? What did you see that you liked?
Well, I think, first of all, as we did the game yesterday, it's Anish Shroff, Jake Delhomme, and me. So I'm sitting with Jake Delhomme, and Jake's met Bryce a couple of times, even though Jake lives in Louisiana. So he was up here around the draft time. He was at training camp one day, and he spent several hours in each case with Bryce and just talking football and how he processes and what he sees. Kind of like when you used to watch, the old Gruden thing where you sit there and break up tape and do all that stuff. And he is so impressed with Bryce. So I think you just have to look at the big picture of the why. Why did you trade up to draft this now 22-year-old quarterback? And you're planning for today, but also for tomorrow. So again, every rookie quarterback's going to have their time where they've got to grow. They're not going to be a finished product on day one. But beyond that, I think there's some things the defense did that were really good early on with the pressure that Derek Brown and also Burns was putting up front. So that's a positive. I like having a real pass catching tight end again, which Hayden Hurst. That's the best we've had since Greg Olsen. So I think that's going to be a key component for them too. So there are some good things to like there, and obviously lots to clean up. But there were some positives, obviously.
Jim Szoke, part of the Carolina Panthers broadcast team. Jim, talk about the receiver situation, especially as it was yesterday. And I understand this is a fluid situation with DJ Chark being out. Adam Thielen was questionable right up until game time. How much did a thin position group there affect Bryce Young yesterday? Obviously, he needs all the experience he can get in the receiver room. So how much did that hurt him yesterday?
I think it'll help when they get DJ Chark back because he is the fastest of the receivers. I know Frank Reich was asked about speed today, and he said they've got speed beyond that. He said there were reads and choices that if Bryce wanted to go long, it was there. If they not necessarily open, but that was an option on plays of things he could have picked, even though they just had one pass attempted for over 20 yards yesterday. That doesn't mean they weren't trying or that it wasn't available to them. So I think it'll come more. And I think they'll probably adjust because they're going to realize teams are going to, really obviously play like Jesse Bates did yesterday, where the safety's not as deep and playing closer to the line of scrimmage. So they're going to have to throw more often deep down the field to open that up. And having said that, I think Terrace Marshall might be a guy that could be part of that component for them too. I think as Mingo plays more, I mean, it may not be a vertical route, but deep digs and things like that, where he gets more involved on the deeper stuff like that. But Laviska's really fast. They don't really use him in that way as far as a downfield deep receiver. So again, when you talk about the receiving game, Hayden Hurst was the top receiver of the ball. He had 5 yesterday. And I think second was Miles Sanders. He wasn't getting the ball in that way a lot with Philadelphia. I think he had 20 catches all last year, but here he will. So when you talk about the receiving game, tight end, running back, that's all going to be part of the mix of what they're doing with throwing the ball.
When you look at the early success of NFL quarterbacks, Jim, and then even what Coach Prime is doing at Colorado, our patience, as fans for waiting years for a winner to develop is wearing thin because we now have evidence that it doesn't always take that long. In your opinion, what is the time frame in which to come to a reasonable conclusion on the draft pick of Bryce Young?
I think, I think we'll see it during the season. I don't think it's be like it won't be this year. So I think as the season goes on, and it might be week 2, I think things are going to be more unveiled to him in the playbook too. I mean, as smart as he is and what he knows, they're probably doing, whatever percentage of the playbook right now, and teams across the league, add wrinkles, add dimension, and save stuff for certain matchups as the season goes on. So he can handle that mentally. So I think that's what's key, is that what they were doing is not going to be what it's going to be in November and December. He's got so much of the playbook available to him, and he'll have experienced days like Jesse Bates playing a veteran safety, picking two balls up on him that he's going to recall, and he's going to learn from those situations. So I think that's all going to come. And C.J. Stroud didn't have the touchdown in their loss yesterday. Richardson probably of the three had obviously the better stats and all that, but I still like what they're rolling with. I'll tell you, Mark, watching that game yesterday, eyeball test alone and knowing what we know about Bryce Harper, I would much rather in our division be rolling forward with Bryce Harper than Desmond Ridder, even though Atlanta won yesterday, because he doesn't look nearly as polished. And here was Bryce playing his first pro game yesterday.
Recall, Jim, that detractors were using the B word about Trevor Lawrence after just one season in Jacksonville as well. What did you see there as far as the why on Bryce's 2 interceptions?
I think he just wasn't recognizing the depth of the safety, first of all. So he was throwing in both cases like the same pass play. First was Hayden Hurst, and then it was Terrace Marshall in the second one. He was throwing to an open receiver, not seeing the depth of the safety coming in the middle. So the first one, I think Bates was just smartly sitting back, and then the second one, I don't think he even saw him. So it happened a second time. So that's, again, just they'll do film study. They're already doing it now. And again, I'm not saying it will never happen again, but he's going to recognize that he's going to have to see things. When you watch his eyes, was one of the things that Jake Delhomme talked about yesterday in the booth as well. You see how quickly his head moves and how he processes, and why he doesn't get batted passes in large part, he said, is because he's not patting the ball, staring at his receiver like Baker was when he was here last year. He's much more adept at being where he's intentionally looking off receivers, knowing he's going to throw to a different direction, but trying to move defensive backs with his eyes. And that will only become better as it goes on in terms of how he works that through against defenses moving forward.
Jim, if I were to say to my employer, I have outperformed my contract and I am not coming in until I have a new deal, my employer would so swiftly say, see ya. And there would be
the Diesel show now.
Yes, there you go. In many people's cases, it would be better. But at the same token, I respect, and we thought and we hoped that we might see Brian Burns on Sunday, and we did. He seems like a good kid, good head on his shoulders. Can you speak to this entire process and how the team is looking at what's going on here?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's incredibly professional the way that Brian Burns is not only playing and practicing. He only sat out 2 practices. If he worked all through training camp and put in work, but just what a nod to him in this day and age of players that don't and would hurt their teams and would sit home and so forth. And he's risking injury by being out there doing it. So I mean, it's amazing what I think he's doing right now. What I've been told is I think there's a number that he's got, that they've got, that let's just say in general, we know the new bar has just been raised now with Nick Bosa. It's at 34. In general, what I'm hearing is he's looking for something around 30, and that the team was looking for something more in the low 20s. But now with the new bar being set, I think, high 20s will be an expectation. That's realistic. That's actually more than Myles Garrett. He's making $25 million, but on a contract that's not as current and it's fresh. So these every time we get around to these, it changes the number for quarterbacks. Obviously, just got changed too. So I would assume the price where they'll meet will probably be, instead of where the Panthers wanted it in the low 20s, probably in the high 20s because of today's new market as of last week. So I think it'll get worked out. He wants to be here. When you look at our team, when you look at our roster, who like when you're game planning against this guy, that's the guy you really got to keep an eye on. That's the one we got to do something about. And it's Brian Burns, and it's Derek Brown to a degree too, who needs to be paid as far as the next guy after that. But I think in general, if you had to pick one, it's Brian Burns is the guy that you have to game plan against, and you got to have a guy like that on your roster, I think.
He is Jim Szoke, my friends. Jim, can we close with this? What's one thing you really want to see against the Saints that you didn't see against Atlanta?
I think where we started a little bit, I would love to see them open it up downfield. If it's deeper corner routes or whatever that are maybe not right down the middle, things that are more on the sidelines, more vertical routes like that. I would love to see DJ Chark play and be a part of that process and have that personnel available to you. But yeah, I think, they had to do what they did yesterday, and I thought Bryce did a good job, but open it up and take some deeper shots, and that will loosen up what's open underneath. I think that's probably to some degree what they'll do. I'm sure there'll be more of that anyway.
Looking forward to checking you out this season, Jim, not only with the Carolina Panthers, but also with my wife's alma mater, East Carolina. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Jim Szoke on the Carolina Panthers. front, and certainly hopeful of more, but not fully expecting it last night. Why? For me, Diesel, Atlanta actually has a legitimate top 10 offensive line. They have a returning 1,000-yard rusher. Bijan Robinson, this number 8 pick from Texas, looked like a wonderkind, right? They've got Kyle Pitts from Florida as well. They can kind of hide the fact that they don't have a quarterback. Desmond Ridder had 53 yards passing with 10 minutes to go in the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they got to hide the fact that last year they had a bottom third of the NFL defense as well. Don't forget, it's not like they were going up against the Philadelphia Eagles here or anything on defense. But, I said it in the pregame show yesterday from live from Dave and Buster's that Carolina Panther fans just need to be a little bit patient this year with Bryce Young and know that next year they have some money to play with. They're going to use a big chunk of this $55 million in cap space they free up next year to pay Brian Burns what he wants. They're going to use a chunk of it probably to go out there and try to get him a number one wide receiver. There's a handful of guys that are, some of them are a little long in the tooth, like a Mike Evans type. He's going to be available next year. A veteran wide receiver like Mike Evans would be huge for Carolina to get. And so Bryce Young he needs to be patient. He needs to show flashes. He needs to show the ability to attract other quality players who want to come play with the Bryce Young.
Coming up next on the show, a convincing win for the Gamecocks over the Furman Paladins, who did not F the Gamecocks all the time. But there is one concern that I have that resonates with me that I'll share with the Gamecock fans next, right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel. And we are the Fan Upstate. All credit to the Gamecocks for an impressive, comfortable win when all was said and done. I said the score would be 38-26, South Carolina. Furman scored 5 fewer points than I thought, and South Carolina scored 9 more. Ended up being 47-21 was the final from Williams-Brice Stadium. It wasn't without some trepidation for South Carolina, but again, Furman ended up being a team. Furman is a team that would be about number 60, number 65 if they played in the FBS, right? Clemson played a team that was 2-8 in the FCS last season. Clemson played a team that was a joke. South Carolina played a top 10 FCS team that, oh, by the way, could conceivably win the FCS national championship this year. And Furman did get off to a 14-7 lead in the second quarter. And then here's what happened. All right, here is what happened. Spencer Rattler blossoming into a potential superstar is what happened. And when we talk about what the Heisman should be, what MVP means, to me it means this. What would your team be without you? To me, Kevin Durant wasn't really overly ever valuable to the Warriors because I was saying to myself, they would win the championship without him, right? Like I've already seen them win the championship without him. How valuable is he? And all of that talk ultimately resulted in Kevin Durant leaving. Ask yourself honestly, okay? No offensive line, no defensive line. Ask yourself honestly, what would South Carolina be without Spencer Rattler? Just keep it a buck. Keep it 100. Ask yourselves that question honestly. Furman was able to put up 323 yards of offense against South Carolina. Furman was able to throw the ball for 243 yards against South Carolina. Again, like if I said to you, South Carolina won a game 47-21, they outgained their opposition 571-323, it probably feels like they just played UAB, right? Well, that's about what Furman is. Furman is Georgia Southern. Furman is UAB. That's what Furman is if they were at the FBS level. That's a doggone good FCS team. All right. And so if I am a Gamecock fan and I am appreciative of what Spencer Rattler has done for us, and I am looking at where we are and where we're going and knowing that Georgia is on the docket this week, I think the Gamecocks, ladies and gentlemen, have a chance to be competitive against the Bulldogs. I really do. I am going to stick with the scores that I have had since the offseason. I saw nothing against North Carolina that made me change my Furman pick. 38-26, South Carolina, they won 47-21. I've seen nothing thus far to make me change my Georgia pick. My Georgia pick against South Carolina is Georgia 31, South Carolina 20. I think South Carolina is competitive in this game, and they're competitive in this game because of Spencer Rattler. Rattler, again, didn't we see this last year, you said? Well, yeah, what you got, 2 games is a blip. 5 games is a trend. Spencer Rattler is now trending. All right? He is now trending. He is now turning into that dude. 55 for 66 in 2 games, passing, behind no offensive line. That's 83% completions. These are not exactly all screen passes either. 698 yards. That's an average of 349 a game for 2 games. 3 touchdowns, no picks for Spencer Rattler. Again, the value to Spencer Rattler, of Spencer Rattler to South Carolina, is not just maybe that he helps you to a 7-5 season this year. It's helping the wheels not fall off and enabling Beamer to build a program and build some momentum. You can't have momentum if you don't have Rattler and the team finishes 3-9. Spencer Rattler prevents that from happening, right? It's incredible. It really, he's playing out of his freaking mind right now. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it for Gamecock fans. You heard me say in the open of the show today, folks, and I believe this. South Carolina is in a better position right now than Clemson. South Carolina, if they go 8-4, 7-5, they're going to say, okay, we weathered the storm. We still believe in Beamer. We're still looking at the up and up. We still can climb. Clemson, when they miss the playoff this year, is going to be like, God, what happened to us? Why has Dabo lost his fastball? South Carolina is in a better position than Clemson.
You know who doesn't believe in Shane Beamer? Crazy Ralph.
This friggin' Beamer might be able to fool you in the press conference, in these kids' living rooms, and certainly in friggin' moron Ray Tanner's office. But he can't fool all of us who watched that game last Saturday night.
I don't think we're going to be hearing from Crazy Ralph this week, but I venture to guess, Diesel, we will be hearing from him next week, right? Not this week because they won.
Yeah.
We'll hear from him next week when South Carolina loses. That seems to be how Crazy Ralph rolls. It does.
Look, you always need data points on a team. You just cannot know. South Carolina got beat by North Carolina. North Carolina, who didn't have a good defensive line last year, made South Carolina's O-line look like a bunch of toddlers out there. But Furman is a drop down in defensive line prowess. We're going to find out for real. Like, they will be facing the full gamut, the full range of D lines that they're going to play all season. Now we're getting the best of the best. South Carolina, you're lucky because you're getting them third. You've had 2 weeks to figure this thing out now. So we're going to find out for real who South Carolina and their offensive, what their offensive line can do, and what Spencer Rattler can do. Will he regress to the mean when he's pressured by a D line as good as Georgia's, or will he rise up?
And here's my concern right now, Diesel, for South Carolina. Here is my concern. I think they really are a bit of a one-man team. I honest to God, guys. Look, don't say I'm hating. I'm wearing my garnet in studio today for you guys, okay? But not really for you guys, but I've got garnet on. Spencer Rattler, without, what else do you have on that team? Well, you say, we have Xavier Legette. We have Eddie Lewis. Do you? If you don't have Spencer Rattler, how is Xavier Legette getting 118 yards through the air? With Spencer Rattler, he looks legit. There'd be a lot of quarterbacks. Graham Mertz, who could make Xavier Legette look really average. Graham Mertz is the Florida Gators quarterback right now. So as I look at this outside looking in from a Gamecock perspective, okay, I am concerned that Spencer Rattler is all we got. We don't have a defense. We don't have an offensive line. We don't have a running back. We don't have a running game. We were outside the top 100 in rush defense. We were outside the top 100 in rush offense. Against Furman, the team barely managed 100 yards rushing. Against Furman, Diesel, South Carolina averaged 2.8 yards on the ground. Now, Furman averaged 2.6 yards on the ground against South Carolina. South Carolina averaged 2.8 yards on the ground against Furman. They carried 39 times for just 108 yards. They could not run the ball against Furman. Is Spencer Rattler so good that he transcends being one-dimensional? Looks that way thus far. Playing out of his mind, 25 for 27. I don't know, guys. Are you of the belief that South Carolina is in danger of coming off like a one-man team? Are you of that belief? Texter wants me to know that Lenore Sellers looked pretty good too. 2 touchdown passes, 98.1 QBR, 4 for 4, 86-yard passes. They played everybody. Luke Doty, 2 for 4. Colton Gauthier, 1 for 2, right? 463 yards through the air. But what do you have that you feel good about that is not Spencer Rattler at this moment?
Yeah, but J.D. Wyatt's still not sold on it. He's calling him a 4th-round pick.
4th-round pick.
4th round. That seems a little low, J.D. I mean, I could see him as a 2nd-rounder right now.
Let's see here. Texter says, Mark, FSU beats Clemson 38-14. Wow. Texter says, Mark, tell him he's lucky it won't be as loud at noon than it would at night. That goes for most stadiums in America that play at noon. There you go. All right, folks. So at this point of the season, hit me with this. Okay. Number one, do you agree with me that South Carolina looks like a one-man team? Point number two, do you also agree with me that South Carolina as a program is in a better position now than Clemson is? Clemson is about to let their fan base down unless they're perfect the rest of the way for the third year in a row. South Carolina still has the vibe that they are ascending, right? And then finally, what do you feel like through 2 weeks of the college football season? What do you know? Okay? I may not know much, but I know this. What is that for you?
It's not what you know. It's what you can prove.
What can you prove in college football thus far this year? What do you know? Diesel acing it with the clips here in the early gangster. It was really was. All right, my friends, let's get to Crazy Ralph, who's up next. He heard us and he's chiming in. Crazy Ralph, you're offsides. Go ahead, pal.
Hey there, Mark. Here's what I know today is that Carolina hasn't played anybody. Look what App State did to UNC this week. UNC was lucky to get out of that game. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a bloodbath on Saturday. South Carolina's in big trouble, man. And Rattler, everybody's going to be calling for his head after 3 SEC games. I told you guys this. Do you remember last spring? I told you this was coming. 25 of 27 against these teams. Come on, man. Let me tell you, Lenore Sellis, that's the future right there. I said it to my kid the other night. I hope I don't wish ill will on anybody, but I'm telling you right now, the best thing for South Carolina is for Rattler to get his legs broken against Georgia and Sellis to come in and take over. I'm telling you, this kid's going to be a superstar. Rattler, every single touchdown pass he threw, his receivers had to come back to the ball. Sellis hit that kid in stride. It was a beautiful thing. I'm excited. I'm pumped, but I'm telling you what, it's going to be a 4-win season, and Saturday is going to be ugly, and people are going to be calling for Rattler's head.
Well, Crazy Ralph, we know exactly what you said last season because we keep receipts, and we love playing them back here on the show. This was you about Spencer Rattler last season.
Yeah.
You also said this. It seems like your opinion hasn't changed.
No, baby, I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. I don't change. I'm my own man. I don't listen to the talking head. I see what I see, and what I see is a guy who's played 2 toilet bowl teams the last couple weeks, and everybody acts like he's this superstar. Mark, I love you, man, but I'm telling you, we don't even have a one-man team right now. This is ugly. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Sellis is the guy. Later, guys.
All right. Look, buddy. We don't want anybody's legs to get broken, bro. I mean, come on, man. Legs broken. If you want to turn the page, if you're willing to take 1 step back with Sellers to take 2 steps forward, good on you, man. Good on you. And I'm glad you got something to be excited about, brother. But wishing ill will on Rattler is not the deal. Diesel, I got to say this, though, okay? I got to say this. And I was going to save this, Diesel, till 5:40, and I can't. Appalachian State is better than South Carolina, okay? When we have our North and South Carolina team rankings, you're going to see that. And normally I understand transitive property. If A beats B and B beats C, does A beat C? You can't prove that in football, but when it's back-to-back weeks and when it's North Carolina at home, and when I'm watching most of that game pulling for Appalachian State because I know Diesel is, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, you don't pull for Florida ever. The hell with that. I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. But Diesel.
I don't want to see Florida lose. Isn't that?
Go ahead.
I wasn't hoping that Utah would make Florida look bad. They did enough of that on their own.
Yeah.
You didn't need my help.
But the bottom line is, I was watching that game feeling like Appalachian State should win this game. Like from what I was seeing, they should win this game. They didn't. It was uber close. And I'm here to tell you, App State is better than South Carolina right now.
I just want to tell Crazy Ralph to follow this other little bit of his own advice.
Just get a grip, would you?
Yeah, because he's a little unhinged. He's a little unhinged on this. He's got this axe to grind with Spencer Rattler. I don't know what it is. He just needed some extra time to develop in the system. I think he's going to have a pretty solid season. Maybe not against the elites of the league, but I think he could have a pretty good season.
Let's see here. Texter says, Mark, I'm going 42-10 Georgia over South Carolina. Don't forget, Rattler only played for 2.5 quarters Saturday, so says Mongo. Would love for Rattler to improve his draft stock and add to that cred, and also glad Beamer got to flash the future to us. Also, a texter says, let's see here. I know what I want right now is the SEC is not the SEC of recent years with dominance. So says JD. So we asked you guys, what do you know thus far in college football? All right. What do you know? What were your biggest takeaways from week 2 of the sport? We will rapid fire fly through NFL, college football, different takes. So we're going to set a Guinness Book of World Records for the greatest number of takes in a segment. And that's going to be next. And we're glad you guys are here to enjoy it with us. Right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides. Mark, Ron, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 o'clock p.m. today. Truly do appreciate you guys making us part of your afternoon. You know, my takes thus far, South Carolina as a program is in a better spot than Clemson. The expectations are in line. Clemson's expectations seem to be out of line with the way that team is performing. When that's happening, when that's the case, you're cruising to be heartbroken, man. You're cruising to be heartbroken. I worry for the Gamecocks that they are a bit of a one-man team. Crazy Ralph says they're a no-man team. But I do think you've got a superstar at the most important position, the quarterback position. Spencer Rattler, 83% completions through 2 games, 83%. Guys, he went 31 for 39 behind the worst offensive line output I've ever seen against North Carolina. Give that guy his props, because 2 games last year was a blip. 5 games is now a trend. Give him his just due. He is the reason South Carolina stays afloat this year while Shane Beamer builds a roster around him. All right? What do you feel like you know about college football 2 weeks in? What do you feel like you know? What is your Saturday takeaway? Let's get to, let's see here. Johnny from Clemson, who joins us up next on the show. Johnny, what's good, brother? You're Offsides.
Not much, man. It's your boy Johnny Carrot. Just checking in with you.
There you go. Hey, by the way, I had breakfast with Johnny and the Clemson Oculus on Saturday. Yeah, it was on Friday. It was awesome. We went to Biscuit Head, and Johnny, hopefully I gave you the best biscuit head of your life.
That was terrific. Absolutely. Hey, I want to let you know what I know about Clemson right now, and I'll get to South Carolina. What I know about Clemson is we turned the corner in the second half. We turned the corner. Everything's got to touch up on it a little bit more next game, and we're going to be ready for a hot noon kickoff.
Well, yeah, but you turned the corner, but you got a brick wall coming at you 100 miles an hour on September 23rd.
That's right. Well, you know me. I'm a bricklayer, and I know how to tear them down just like I know how to build them up.
All right, I got you. So is your take then, Johnny, that Saturday is of no concern to you the way Clemson played? Come on, man. Like that there was a lot to be concerned about with how they came out.
Oh, yeah. People be concerned, but it's all right. That's Cade's first start inside Death Valley. You know, it's intimidating even for the home guys. He had to get over his nerves.
There you go. How about the Gamecocks?
Hey, what I know about the Gamecocks is they got rid of that old rusty trailer park shower curtain for Cocky, and they got the redneck cousin to Thomas the Train to pull him out there. No Tooth Timmy Chug-a-Lug, whatever they want to call him. They got him out there. But what they do have is a dog and a quarterback. I've given Spencer Rattler a lot of grief and poked fun at him, but that dude is running for his life, dropping dimes. There's no doubt about it.
Man, he is. Johnny Carrots. I'm sad about this. Guess who's joining us in 5 minutes?
Who's that?
Chris Phillips, the Spurs Up Show.
Oh,
You know, I got
man.
one time I got to get the two of you guys on here together. You know?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. We will mention that you say we will mention in the next segment that you send your warmest regards, okay?
That's right. My right arm misses it.
Hey, Johnny Carrots, good to hear from you, pal.
Brother.
Great to meet you the other day. Johnny Carrots and Clemson Oculus. I met both of them. Had a little breakfast with them on Friday morning. It was good times.
I'm still waiting for a P1 to text in and call into this show and start calling themselves the Gamecoculus.
Oh, that's good. I remember we had Clemson Oculus putting that together for us on Friday.
I'm surprised Clemson Oculus didn't make it look more like a you know what.
So
schwanz.
let me get to some quick takes from around college football here. Texas, Alabama. Did Nick Saban get old overnight? This does not look like the Alabama of old. Now, what we knew was that Texas had a quarterback advantage. Established quarterback versus Alabama kind of picking the best of the three-headed monster, Jalen Milroe. What we didn't expect was that Texas would be so close to Alabama everywhere else. You know, the only conclusion I can draw, folks, in a game in which Texas outgained Alabama 454 to 362, No turnovers for Texas, 2 turnovers for Alabama, is that Alabama just isn't the same. And, coaching performance tends to decline after the age of 65. Nick Saban, 71. I wonder if the best of Nick Saban is behind him. Florida State looks like an NFL team playing college football right now. It's just unfair. 66-13 over Southern Miss. Washington, Michael Penix Jr., very impressed with him. Washington is on my honorable mention playoff teams right now. I think everyone's sleeping on them. Notre Dame, I want to let you guys know I won 3 out of 4 bets that I had this week. All right. I won Miami over Texas A&M, won some money there. I won Ole Miss over Tulane. Diesel lost some money. I won some money there. I won Notre Dame over NC State. I needed to give up 7 points. I'm like, do you guys
easy money.
Watch this team?
Yeah.
You watch them? Like they're rolling people.
Remember last year, week 2 or 3 after the Marshall game, people were asking if Notre Dame had made a mistake at head coach.
Ooh. They got better talent now than they ever have.
And before you get too deep in the weeds on other things, what did you think about the Texas players running up to Alabama's recruits and screaming from the field, "Come to Texas, come to Texas, come to Texas"?
I loved it. I thought Oregon was very underwhelming to me. Barely beat Texas Tech. Texas Tech is now 0-2. Texas Tech, Diesel, lost to Texas. What was it? Texas State the first week of the year.
So, no, that was Baylor. Baylor lost to Texas State.
Who did Texas Tech lose to the first week of the year? Let's see here. It's right here. Texas Tech lost to Wyoming the first week of the year. And Oregon barely beat them. I was impressed as hell with Colorado, Texas, Notre Dame, Ole Miss, Washington, and yes, Diesel, Appalachian State. I know you're above moral victories. I'm just telling you, I was impressed. I was underwhelmed by Oregon, Texas A&M, Clemson, NC State, Alabama, and Tennessee. That was scuffling around with Austin's P on Saturday. Did you see what I did there?
I did.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with App State's backup quarterback. His name is Joey Aguilar. He is he's a JUCO transfer. He was quarterback number 2, first game of the season, QB1, has been QB1 all off season. Compound fractures his finger, bone sticking out of the skin, and he still threw a touchdown in that game with a broken finger. Joey Aguilar backup comes in, and man, he looked absolutely lights out. He looked so poised in the pocket against North Carolina. The thing in that game is when you give up 238 on the ground to a running back, you are unlikely to be successful. That shows that you can pound the ball when you want, where you want, how you want, and pick up yards. That's the reason App State lost that game.
It is, but earned a lot of respect from me anyway, in terms of the back and forth. And
it was a weird thing to see North Carolina drop 3 places in the polls after winning a game like that in overtime. Do you think that is that an ACC bias? An ACC team struggles, for lack of a better word. This is how the pollsters will look at it. An ACC team, top 25 team, struggles with a really good group of 5 team, and they lose poll position because of it.
It's a slap in the face to App State, is what it is. It's like they weren't supposed to be very good, so we're going to drop them. We're going to knock them out. There's going to be more on that game coming your way in the top 5 at 5, my friends. Ole Miss over Tulane, that was predictable for me. Ole Miss is just too good. I think Ole Miss might actually be the 3rd best team in the SEC this year. Might actually be. Let's be honest, after Georgia right now, there is a debate. Like no one is stepping up to claim that 2nd spot in the SEC thus far this season. All right, coming up next on the show, if you had a message for the Spurs Up Show, okay, Chris Phillips joins us every Monday at 4:40. What message would that be? All right, send it to us via the carpro.com text line at 71307. Start your text with the word fan and away you go. And we just might share it with Chris next, right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark, Ron, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. Congrats, Gamecocks, on a win over a very good team. By my estimation, about the 60th best team at the FBS level is exactly what Furman would be. All right? You've got a superstar quarterback, which is the most important position. That's the good. All right? Here is the bad. Furman averaged almost as many yards per attempt on the ground as South Carolina did. South Carolina averaged 2.8 yards per rushing attempt. Furman averaged 2.6 yards a game, or yards per play on the ground. And then there is the ugly. It looks to me like South Carolina is a one-man team. There's no defense. There's no offensive line. Xavier Legette is a specimen, but without somebody to get him the football, what is he? There's no running game to speak of whatsoever. Shane Beamer should be kissing the feet of Spencer Rattler for keeping his program above water while he builds a program. Without Spencer Rattler, this looks like a 3-9 football team to me. Joining us right now is the host of the Spurs Up Show. It's called The Daily Crow. Follow him on Twitter at the Spurs Up Show. Chris Phillips joins us. Chris, congratulations on the win. How are you, man?
Mark and Diesel, I appreciate you having me. I'm doing well, man. Obviously, it feels good to see South Carolina notch that first win of their 2023 season, and now we get into SEC play, man, which, I honestly, to take it away from the South Carolina perspective as well, Mark, it's been baffling how bad the SEC has been in big games. 6 losses to Power 5 teams over the first 2 weeks. All 6 of those losses have come by double digits. So excited that they're getting a conference play and just learn more about these football teams. And obviously for South Carolina, that starts with a really, really tough test between the hedges against the Georgia Bulldogs.
So, Chris, South Carolina as a one-man team. It looks that way, doesn't it?
It does. It does. I mean, I think when you factor in the offensive line, I mean, there are other pieces, those of us that, spend day in, day out examining the football team. But to your point, Mark, in regards to big-time players, big-time SEC talent, it begins and ends with Spencer Rattler. And I said this last summer, Mark, that I thought South Carolina would go as far as 7 took them. And I said this offseason, I felt even more strongly about that because, to your point, I thought there were less answers, right? There were more questions than there were answers. And without Spencer Rattler's, without his play, where would they be as a football team? I think you're absolutely right. There's no running game to speak of. Juice Wells, of course, has been out. So that's put the pressure on Xavier Legette, who has performed at a high level, by the way. But, yeah, without Spencer Rattler, who knows where this football team is at. Thankfully, you don't have to think about that reality. And thankfully, he looks much more comfortable this year than he did last. And I think that'll give South Carolina a chance in a lot of these ball games upcoming.
So based on what you saw, Chris, in week 1, what does South Carolina most have to do to be ready for Georgia?
That's a great question, Mark, because I don't think, you mentioned the struggles on the offensive line and the running game. I don't think Georgia's the team that you want to roll in there looking to find your running game, and I don't think they're the team that you're going to find their running game against. I think the best thing to take away from that Furman victory outside of the stars of tomorrow shining bright, guys like Lenoris Sellers, Dontavius Braswell, Pup Howard, Jelon Kilgore, the offensive line guys, the list goes on and on. But the guys on this year's football team that are going to help you win now, I think it is Spencer Rattler. I mean, I think that's the biggest takeaway in regards to, and, it's beyond the stats for me, Mark. Those things are impressive and they're fun to talk about and look at. But he just looks so much more comfortable, right, than he did a season ago in that offense where it looked like he was thinking about 100 different things at line of scrimmage, and you could tell he was kind of playing that half speed. So, what they can take away into Georgia is you have a confident Spencer Rattler. And like I mentioned, Mark, a confident Spencer Rattler at least gives you a chance. Now, obviously, I'm worried about the line of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively. You mentioned this, Mark, South Carolina averaging just 2.8 yards per carry against the Paladins. And I saw a lot of Gamecock fans after the game saying, well, we should just go air raid. Let's just throw it every play. And admittedly, I'm guilty of it saying, hey, ditch the run game, just throw the football. But that's so much easier said than done, right, when you take on a team like a Georgia and get in the SEC play. If you're living in out of 3rd and long and you can't get to 2nd and 3rd manageable, I mean, you're just going to make it really, really tough on Spencer Rattler when Georgia's obviously pinning their ears back coming for his head. So the good news is, again, I think you've got a confident Spencer Rattler rolling in Athens, but I think it's going to take a masterful game plan from Dowell Loggins, using a quick screen game, getting the ball outside of your playmakers, because I just don't see any solutions or any answers up the middle for South Carolina in regards to running the football. So they're going to have to find different ways to generate some different things to take the pressure off of QB1.
It's big or small. Was there anything that Furman was able to do against South Carolina that concerns you?
Well, I said it after week 1, and I feel the same way after week 2. I'm concerned about the defensive front. I am. I think there's some individuals on that side that are capable, guys like Boogie Huntley and Tonka Hemingway and Jordan Strawn. But, they seriously lack SEC depth, right? And a guy right now, Jatius Gear, the Syracuse transfer, the edge that is out right now with injury, they just don't have a lot of high-quality SEC bodies, in my opinion. I think they're going to struggle to stop the run again. I think we're going to see that all day Saturday. I think Georgia will most likely expose that. Also, the loss of Mo Kaba at the linebacker position is huge. And to the point, Diesel, by the way, about the Furman game, I try not to take too many conclusions from it, right? We're seeing a lot of SEC teams struggle against quote-unquote lesser competition. And so it's hard to really take anything away or draw conclusions. But the biggest thing for that game against Furman, it was a get-right game. It was a feel-good game. It was a game where South Carolina was able to generate some positive momentum and have some success. But, obviously it was dicey early, and I think slow starts is another thing that really concerns me as well. I don't know what it is about Clayton White, Shane Beamer, and that crew, but they just come out slow, whether it's starting a season slow, it's starting a game slow. It just feels like it's always dicey in the first half for South Carolina. So they can't afford a slow start in Athens, because if it happens again, you're going to get behind the 8 ball and never be able to recover.
Chris, I've argued today on the show that I think the Gamecocks are in a better position here on September 11th than Clemson is. Here's why. Relative to expectations, South Carolina still has everything in front of them. Fans still feeling generally upbeat, still can have a successful year. And I look at Clemson, they've got to be perfect to avoid a failure now the rest of the season. If Clemson doesn't go undefeated, they don't make the playoff. If they don't make the playoff, that was the success or failure that everyone agreed to in the offseason. Everyone agreed to that. So would you not agree, overall, all told, the Gamecocks are in a better spot?
I would agree, Mark. And I think it goes back to the point you made. When your expectations are sky high, and those elite teams, Mark, it looks a certain way. Wouldn't we agree? And also, you look at what Clemson, Florida State looked in week 1, and I think there's going to be some other tough outs on their schedule with North Carolina and NC State, and obviously Notre Dame's a really good team with Sam Hartman at quarterback. So I think there's a lot of pitfalls on that schedule, and I think certainly it's just. When the expectations are more manageable and they're easier to reach, I think that helps the case. But, also you look at quarterback play. South Carolina right now has Spencer Rattler, who it looks like is primed to have his best season ever at the collegiate level. I don't know what to think about Cade Klubnik, man. I know he recovered from that early pick 6, but, that's one of the worst throws you'll ever see a college quarterback make. Cade Klubnik, to me right now, Clemson fans want him to be Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson. He looks more like Willie Corn to me. I don't know if that name rings a bell for you, but just a 5-star complete bust. I expected so much more out of the Clemson offense early on. They might get it rolling, but they better do it quickly, because Florida State's coming to town, and if they don't, they're going to beat Clemson soundly, right? If it doesn't happen, and then the real panic will set in. So. Yeah, I think South Carolina, Mark, they're in a better position simply because, like you mentioned, Clemson's walking a tightrope right now. They have to go unblemished. And the game, song and dance before under Shane Beamer, they start slow, they catch fire in the second half. So they can still get to 7 or 8 wins. There's room for error there. Clemson, not so much.
Willie Corn, heck of a coordinator, by the way. He's doing big things in his coordinator position. Chris, I want you to give me a letter grade on that fake choo-choo train on wheels rolling out into the stadium for the first time, the unveiling of a new tradition, I suppose. How do you feel about it? How do the Gamecock fans that you've spoken to feel about it? Is it there to stay?
Diesel, now we're getting into the real controversial topics right here on this Monday. Admittedly, obviously, guys, I was not there in person because we were hosting our post-game call-in show and stuff like that. So I wasn't at the stadium, but saw plenty of video, talked to plenty of people, and there's definitely mixed reviews on it, right? Anytime something's met with change, especially something that has been around for so long that's been kind of one way, change is always met with resistance. I'll give it a C+, just because I'm kind of indifferent about it, guys. I thought Cocky's his unveiling at the stadium, if you will, during 2001, the entrance, it needed to be upgraded because it was literally just a cage made of PVC pipe with a shower curtain. Like, I thought they could do a lot more. I think the train is cool. I think it is a much more, it's a neat thing they're doing. But for me, I kind of like the tradition. So I'm sort of indifferent about it. I'm not saying it's a bad move or anything like that, but it is very, very different. Probably going to take some getting used to. But, based on the folks I talked to, Diesel, like I said, there were definitely mixed reviews. Some people loved it. Some people absolutely hated it. So we'll see if Gamecock fans warm up to it over time.
Well, Chris, I do question if you're doubling down on the train imagery, do you have to get rid of the cockpit on underneath the Jumbotron, because that is an airplane reference. If you're going trains, you can't be planes, trains, and automobiles, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a reference, I think, to the cockabooses. So yeah, listen, do those rules really apply? I mean, you got a team like Auburn that's got like 4 mascots. So I don't know, man. I feel like in college athletics, you kind of just make it up as you go along, and that's kind of one of those instances. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's a good attempt by them, but I don't know. Like I said, it's going to take some getting used to for sure.
Chris, are you able to hang on with us for a few minutes?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. I want to reassess some things with the Gamecocks, where they look, how things look to fare this year as we move ahead through the rest of the season. Chris Phillips stays on with us next as we wrap up that interview, then get to the top 5 at 5 right here on Offsides. We are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 o'clock p.m. today. Know you got a ton of choices out there. Really do appreciate you making us part of your day. Thank you so much for doing just that. All right, we continue here with our weekly hit with one Chris Phillips. Going to go off the grid with you here a little bit, Chris. You know, we're used to talking Gamecocks with you here, Chris, and I want to ask you, where does Dabo stand with Clemson fans if Florida State were to win convincingly on September 23rd?
Yeah, Mark, I think Clemson fans are pretty pissed off, and justifiably so. I mean, I think you have to – I'll respond to your question with a question. Like, is Dabo Swinney putting Clemson in the best possible position to win at the highest level, right? And I think the answer is a resounding no. Like, when you look at his unwillingness to adapt to the transfer portal and sort of the times that are. And I mean, you know it's bad, Mark. I think you and I were joking about this last week. You know it's bad. You know, I like to have fun with the Clemson folks whenever they lose a game on social media, typical rivalry banter. But you know it's bad when I'm saying something about Dabo Swinney and his future at Clemson after that loss. And a lot of the Clemson fan base is agreeing with me. They're saying things like, hey, I hate that guy, but he's got a point in regards to that. The dynasty that he had at Clemson, it's basically over because of his unwillingness and stubbornness to adapt to the transfer portal and go out and get guys. And I mean, if Florida State comes in there, Mark, and does what we think they're capable of doing with players that this team that they built, right, this superstar group from the portal specifically, there's going to be a lot more questions being asked. And I think that chatter is only going to get louder and louder. So, I think Clemson fans have a legitimate gripe, right? It's you built it to a certain point, and if best truly is the standard, like he says and they say, then is Dabo doing everything he can to be the best? And again, I think the answer is a resounding no.
So, Chris, let's look at the schedule here now, and let's reassess based on what we know. Okay, now you and I in the offseason predicted 7-5. Based on what I know, 6-6 seems like the most likely outcome, but that's not, I'm not going to say that's, you know, they can't do better than that. They can't do worse than that. But as I see this schedule, Chris, I see two more shoe-in wins, Jacksonville State and Vanderbilt, right? Then I see a few games that I think South Carolina doesn't have much of a shot in. Georgia, Tennessee, right? But then, Chris, what I see are 6 toss-up games, in my opinion. 6, all right? Mississippi State, Florida, Missouri, Texas A&M, Kentucky, and Clemson. All right, and so it's, you know, Clemson is now in the toss-up category because they look imminently vulnerable, imminently beatable. So you put all those together, Chris, and I think you're going to be looking at a program where, you know, if you split the 50-50 games, the team goes 6-6. I mean, is that where you're at? I guess I'm moving my we don't move the bar of success or failure, Chris. But in terms of what I think they will be, the reason it's a bit lower right now for me is just because of the state of the offensive line, the state of the running game.
Yeah, Mark, I'm typically not one that I update my season predictions right week to week, and it'd be a fool's errand because if you watch Gamecocks football over the last couple of years, I mean, they're so inconsistent, they're so Jekyll and Hyde, and you drive yourself absolutely batty trying to figure out what the final result's going to be when the dust settles. But, you know, to your point, I was actually asked about this a little bit earlier today, and you know, 7-5, I still feel pretty good about that, believe it or not. You know, I think the Mississippi State game and the Florida games, I think those are going to be real definers of your season, right? South Carolina, you know, I had them 3-3 after their first 6. That's still achievable if you take down Mississippi State and Florida. We now know that Mississippi State game is going to be a night game. I had you losing that game, right, in the preseason, but I had you beating North Carolina. So if you can make up for that UNC loss with that State W, if you can get to 3-3 after your first 6, Mark, I think you can still get to 7-5. I mean, like you mentioned, Jacksonville State and Vandy, both of those teams, both those games should be wins. You know, I had the Clemson game in the preseason, Mark. I had that as a one-score game anyway. So I think that one all of a sudden, you know, I thought Clemson, and maybe they will be by the time we get to late November, right? But I thought they'd be much better offensively than what we've seen thus far. I thought the Garrett Riley, Cade Klubnik thing was going to work and work well. And it very well may, but as of right now, it has not. This South Carolina football team is about what I expected, Mark. You know, the line of scrimmage, the offensive front, nobody could have seen 9 sacks coming in the season opener. But it's just such typical South Carolina, Mark, under Shane Beamer that this team catches fire late in the season, and I'm not doubting they can't do that again. I will tell you the one game that I think I picked as a win that I'm most nervous about, and I know they haven't looked great, but it's the game at Missouri, just because of the line of scrimmage discrepancy when you're talking about South Carolina's offensive front against a Mizzou defensive line that for everything Mizzou isn't, they have a fantastic defense, and their defensive front gave South Carolina fits last year, and I don't see why it wouldn't do the same again. I'm not saying I'm changing my pick, but that's the one I'm probably most worrisome about. But, Mark, again, I think the Gamecocks do their typical song and dance under Shane Beamer. I think they win a couple that maybe going in a game week we don't have high hopes for, and I think they lose a couple that, are these type of 50-50 games, and I think when the dust settles, I think 7-5 is going to be about right for South Carolina. I would not be surprised at all at 6-6. I think the only thing that's changed for me, Mark, is the range of possibilities, right? I don't think 8-4 is really in play for this football team anymore. It was my best case scenario anyways. I think 5-7, though, is in play. If that offensive line continues to struggle and the Gamecocks can't improve there, 5 wins. And if they lose to Mississippi State, Mark, all of a sudden a bunch of possibilities we did not think were possible or things we don't want to talk about necessarily from the Garnet and Black perspective, I think they come into perspective, if you will. But I think 6-6 or 7-5 is where this team will land. But for right now, I'll stick with my 7-5 prediction that I had over the summer.
Chris, we're already hearing from Gamecock fans here today that want the team to punt on this season and just roll with Lenora Sellers. Spencer Rattler came back for, NIL money anyway, didn't get a great NFL evaluation. Why not play for the future? You're going to be exposed at quarterback next year if you don't get him ready now. That's been the take that people have said this year. Let's go with the guy who's our future.
That is one of the more absurd and ridiculous takes, Mark Ryan, that you will ever hear. Imagine telling Spencer Rattler that to his face, that, hey, despite the fact you're completing 83% of your passes over the first 2 games, despite the fact that, you're playing as well, if not better than any quarterback in the SEC and right up to the best in college football. Hey, we're going to sit you the rest of the year so we can play for 2024. Yeah, good luck having that conversation, and good luck. How do you think that would look on South Carolina from the national perspective, recruiting, et cetera? So, listen, what Lenora Sellers did against Furman, it's really exciting. Again, that was my biggest takeaway, Mark, from that game, because how many conclusions can you really draw from a win over an FCS team? But to see the stars of tomorrow shine, guys like Lenora Sellers, Nick Harbor, I went down the list earlier. But, no, listen, Lenora Sellers, his time will come. It'll be his time to shine soon. And, one thing I caution Gamecock fans, and I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer in regards, but this fan base has such a tendency, Mark, to crown people, especially quarterbacks, before they deserve it, right? Like Lenora Sellers has all the tools. They're building this football team through recruiting, but let's just let him do his thing, right? This is Spencer Rattler's year. He came back to be QB1. There is no quarterback controversy, right? Let's stop the conversation. Thank goodness, Mark. It's a very small few, a small crowd that I think is pushing this, but make no mistake, Mark, there's no quarterback controversy in Columbia, and anybody else who tells you differently, I would avoid listening to any of their football opinions from here on out.
Chris Phillips, thanks, pal. We look forward to catching up with you on Thursday, okay?
Mark, you're the man. I appreciate it, Diesel. Y'all take care. Have a great week.
All right, you do the same. Chris Phillips, the Spurs Up Show, one of the more absurd takes he's ever heard.
We got this texter here who's mad at you, Mark. He says, Mark, you're a liar. You heard that take from one jackass caller. Wow, Crazy Ralph, they're talking about you. Quote, people are saying, yeah, one douchebag said that. Liar. See, texter, you don't understand the concept of radio, do you? It's called a setup. Like, you probably at some point played the game or you're familiar with the game of T-ball. It's where you put a ball on a tee, you make it easy for the kid to hit the ball. That's exactly what that is, texter. It's called setting it up, lobbing it over home plate. You don't understand the point of what this is.
Well, the other thing I'll tell you, Diesel, is I wouldn't have said that if it was just one. Like, boy, this guy lives in a snow globe. If he thinks like that's the only time I heard that, Diesel. Okay, yeah. Have you been in my text messages over the weekend, texter? Have you been in my tweets over the weekend, texter? You really think I would say people are saying if it was just that one dude? That one guy reminded me of what I heard over the weekend. Okay, so just widen the lens a little bit.
Yeah, this is not a Kelly Bryant situation, though. I mean, Kelly Bryant, remember, I think he won 10 games the year before they benched him for Trevor Lawrence. This is not a situation like that.
What do you say we get right to it? It is, my friends, the top 5 at 5, the top 5 biggest sports stories of the day, the top 5 topics we're discussing. Let's get to it right now, Diesel. Let's get to it right now. The top 5 at 5, the top 5 biggest sports stories of the day, the top 5 topics we're discussing. Ladies and gentlemen of the Upstate, Offsiders, the top 5 at 5 starts right now.
And now, the top 5 at 5.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hit it!
5.
At number 5, guys, I am going to suspend a name that some of you love and some of you wish I never would have started. But I'm going to suspend it because you've earned it. That name is the All Cupcakes Conference. Why am I suspending that name? I'm suspending that name because the ACC has earned it at this time. Thus far in the season, the ACC is 4-1 against the SEC. No further arguments. Florida State over LSU, Miami over Texas A&M, North Carolina over South Carolina, Wake Forest over Vanderbilt. The only win the SEC has over the ACC is Tennessee over Virginia, over the Fighting Tony Elliots. Really? Guys, you've earned it. Congratulations. Pat yourself on the back. And for a conference that is fighting tooth and nail for survival, this could not come at a better time. I mean, think about where you've been. Think about where you are. Okay? It's one of the ACC's best runs. And, man, you could not have scripted a better time for a run than right now. Congratulations, ACC. No more All Cupcakes Conference for you guys.
Madcraft in the YouTube chat says ACC. It just means something.
Next up.
So good to have the YouTube chat.
Yeah, it is. It is. Next up.
4.
At number 4, how about Clemson's performance? We decided to give it the benefit of the doubt on Saturday and call it a performance. Look, folks, I am glad, I am thrilled that Clemson picked it up, all right, in the second half, flexed its muscles, and handled business. Oh, to be a fly on the wall for Dabo's halftime speech. That said, folks, I can only think big picture. Okay, I can't just look at one game. I'm always widening the lens, always thinking deep, big picture. If Clemson comes out like that against anybody with a pulse, they're dead on arrival. All right? Cobra Kai. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. Clemson's got to have that mindset, man. You can't afford to do what they did Saturday against anybody the rest of the way. You have no margin for error. The reason why I think the Gamecocks are in a better position right now than Clemson is because of the expectations surrounding the Clemson program. Without perfection the rest of the way, without an 11-0 finish, including the ACC championship game, there is no college football playoff for Clemson this year. That makes 3 straight years of no college football playoff. Folks, if you had told me that at the start of 2020, if you had told me, hey, Mark, the start of the COVID-19 pandemic begins a run of no more college football playoff berths for Clemson, I never would have believed you. Never would have believed you. 2021, 2022, 2023, no college football playoff berths. And that's where we are, folks. And, that's the expectation. Clemson's got to find themselves. They got to find themselves quickly. They've got a long way to go, and they've got a short time to get there. Cade Klubnik, I think he's got a lot of talent, a lot of ability, but he's very clearly not ready yet. And you see, my friends, it's the very same thing. I don't see Cade as being ready for a Florida State the same way Rattler wasn't ready to beat a Clemson or a Tennessee until the end of the season last year. What happened when Rattler played Georgia early last year? Remember that? Wasn't pretty. Wasn't good. Wasn't anything, right? Spencer Rattler needed the season to get ready to beat Clemson or Tennessee. I have high level of concerns for Clemson against Florida State. The early line on that game is the Florida State Seminoles favored by 4.5. Next up.
3.
At number 3, folks, just go ahead and call them America's team. The Colorado Buffaloes. Are you kidding me? 2.5-point favorites. They roll Nebraska 36-10. Are you serious? With what? Where did this Shedeur Sanders kid come from? We all looked at him as like a 1AA FCS quarterback. And I'm watching him play, and he's just got such poise and such ease with which he commands the offense. The game looks so easy for him. He's not uptight. He's just easy breezy, beautiful cover girl. There was smack talking from Matt Rule in the offseason. We're not going to build our program the way that some are. I don't think that's equitable. Deion Sanders said that's personal. Like Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, I took that personally. And he took it out on Matt Rule. A team in Colorado that was projected to win 3.5 games this year, that was their over-under, is about to be 3-0 after this week. They've got Colorado State. Is it fair for us to call Colorado America's team now? Are they earning that moniker? And I'll be real with you guys. I lived in Colorado as a kid, right? When you live in Colorado, you're allowed to root for the Buffs and the Rams, Colorado and Colorado State. And I got a little bit misty watching Folsom Field on Saturday because it was like that when I was a kid growing up there. Okay? It was like that. And it's been Exile Island. It's been Death Valley, literally. There's been nothing there to cheer for 20 plus years until Coach Prime has come to town. You know what else Coach Prime has done? He is flushing the patience argument for head coaches. You got to give us time. You got to give us time to build, time to do this. The hell you do. Look at what Colorado's doing right now. If your coach isn't winning in year 3, you probably have the wrong coach. Because regardless of where, your program was, they weren't as bad, they weren't as low as what Colorado was before Coach Prime got there. Next up.
2.
All right, so North Carolina, Appalachian State. North Carolina wins it in overtime, in 2 overtimes, second overtime, double overtime over the Appalachian State Mountaineers. Diesel, your take, your thoughts. I was proud of Appalachian State, man. I know we don't want moral victories. I thought the Mountaineers should have won the game.
Yeah, they should have won that game. And the ending, look, I understand why it wasn't called, but I've seen PI called on the way that game ended many, many times in my years of watching college football. It's ticky-tack if you call it. So, look, I'm not heartbroken. I'm not torn up over the way that game ended. It was a phenomenal football game. What I am torn up about following that game, it was both before the game and after the game, are Mac Brown's comments about saying, I don't want to play that team anymore. I don't want to play that team anymore. And he may feel like he's being, what's the word, deferential to a good team, saying they're good and they're risky and, man, they're tough to play. But to just flat out say, I don't want to play that team anymore. You just had 3 games over a span of 4 seasons that totaled an 11-point differential between those 2 games. You had 3 sold-out football games. You kept revenue in the state. It's a good thing to play these games. It is a good thing to play these games. And to have a sitting head coach, especially one that was the head coach at the school he says he never wants to face again, to come out and say, I don't ever want to schedule them again. Like I'm disappointed in Mac Brown. I'm really disappointed in Mac, the way he handled that. He said it in a pregame press conference, which I thought that time was a little more cold-blooded. This was what he said in the post-game press conference after North Carolina beat App State.
Really proud for those guys as well, and they fought their guts out. I'm glad we don't play again. I'm an App State fan. I can keep my house, and I'm glad we don't play again.
Former head coach at the school. He's got a house 30 miles away from App State's campus, and he says, look, I don't ever want to play him again.
So
and,
Diesel,
and the administration will take that to heart, and that's the problem.
Yeah, Diesel, I think your arrows are pointed at the wrong guy, honestly, because he has played Appalachian State.
No, I know that.
That's not your beef. Your beef is with the South Carolinas and with the North Carolina States and with the Clemsons of the world. At least Mac Brown has done that. I think he's putting a feather in your cap. I think he's saying this is a tough little football team that is really, really good. And I understand you might be right. It's harmful to say that, but at least he's played you for 3 years. Where's everybody else signing up?
The series was scheduled before Mac Brown took the job to come back to Chapel Hill. So Mac Brown didn't sign up for that. Mac Brown didn't choose to do that. And I've said many times on this show that I commend North Carolina for their willingness to go on the road and play regional group of 5 teams. My problem is when you say, as the flagship university in a state where NC State's going to follow your lead, where Wake Forest, where Duke, now they're private, they're on a different, not in the North Carolina state system, but when you have the flagship program of a state saying, we don't ever want to play these games anymore, it gets into the fans' minds. It gets into media members' minds that these games, what do they say all the time? Nothing to gain, everything to lose when we play a team like this. Oh, it's their Super Bowl. They're going to be more hyped for it than we are. Why can't you just say this is a good football program? We need to play them because it makes us better to play them. And it's good for the state and it's good for the fans. That's my problem. Now, NC State has a home-and-home schedule with App State. Clemson, we play them next year here in Death Valley. South Carolina scheduled it and then is pushing it back. I'm not convinced that game in Boone will ever be played. I'm not convinced that South Carolina will ever come to Boone. I think they'll tuck tail and run away from App State. But it's disappointing for me to see a sitting head coach just say flat out, we shouldn't play teams like that.
And finally, South Carolina, big win over Furman. I had it 38-26. Furman had 5 fewer points than I thought. South Carolina had 9 more points than I thought. The good, the bad, the ugly. The good is you got a superstar at quarterback, man. 55 of 66, 83%, no interceptions. 2 games last year was a blip. 5 games now is a trend. Spencer Rattler is trending. The bad. 2.8 yards a carry against Furman. Furman themselves had 2.6 yards a carry. You ran the ball as effectively or ineffectively as Furman did against you. And the ugly. South Carolina, a one-man team. Spencer Rattler, and that's it. Yeah, tell me about Xavier Legette, but what is Xavier Legette without someone to get him the ball? Sure feels like a one-man team to me. What say you? And those are today's top 5 at 5. Now it's your chance to chime in, which you can do at 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-FAN-FONE. That's 844-326-3663. The CarPro.com text line is there for you at 71307 to start your text with the word fan, and away you go. You can get to us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube at The Fan Upstate on all 3. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to us on YouTube. And then finally, email. You guys can all email the show. Mark Ryan, that is M-A-R-C Ryan at thefanupstate.com. All the different ways you can get in touch with us here on the most interactive sports radio show anywhere. Get your questions in on the CarPro.com text line for Cole Bryson on high school football because he recaps week 3 for us next here on Offsides, the Fan Upstate.
Guys, it was a blast to finally be back, finally doing this live stream again. I know you guys have really, really missed it. We love you for being here every single day. Thanks to JD so much for coming out yesterday to the Carolina Kickoff Show. Madcraft, drink a glass of water, get your butt out the house, and come see the show, would you? We'll do it again Monday night next week at 5 o'clock. Monday night at 5 o'clock. Because Carolina plays New Orleans in the Monday Night Football game at 7:15. That's a weird kickoff time. It's a weird kickoff time for Monday Night Football. We talked about that a lot yesterday, guys, but we definitely want to see you out there next Monday night.
We will be your one-stop shop for Clemson, Florida State, South Carolina, Georgia this week. We appreciate you guys so much. We'll see you tomorrow.